In this episode, I'm going to break down some of the unexpected signs and the more commonly known signs that you are emotionally eating. But before we go into those signs, it's really important to understand what is the definition of emotional eating, because you may be surprised by this. So, emotional eating is eating often in excess in response to an emotion, as opposed to in response to physical hunger or true hunger. So, in other words, it means that anytime you're eating from a place that isn't true physical hunger, you are emotionally eating. Anytime you're eating because you're bored, anytime you're eating because it's in front of you, anytime you're eating because you're just finishing what's on your plate, anytime you're eating more than you need, anytime you're eating and you're not actually hungry, that is a form of emotional eating. It can almost always be tracked back to some form of emotion. Generally, it's an uncomfortable emotion. Doesn't mean it's necessarily just quote unquote a negative emotion. I don't like calling any emotions negative or positive. They are all neutral and they are all, some feel comfortable, some feel uncomfortable. But when we develop a healthy relationship with our emotions, we can actually find real bliss in all the spectrum of emotions. But that's a conversation for another day. Today, we are talking about the unexpected signs that you're emotionally eating. So, one would be boredom eating and finding yourself at the pantry or the fridge. People don't often link this to emotional eating, right? We just think, oh, I'm eating because I'm bored. But that ultimately is an emotion under there that you're trying to distract yourself from. You're trying to distract yourself from feeling bored. So if you're standing at the fridge or the pantry looking for food or eating just because you're bored and you're looking for something to do, or if you're just standing blankly staring at the fridge or the pantry and not even knowing what you're looking for, just being like, how did I end up here at the fridge again? That's a form of emotional eating, or it's a sign that you are an emotional eater. And when I'm talking about emotional eating, before we get into this episode even more, I just want to preface that there's no shame in it. And when we can release the shame, release the guilt, release the judgment, that already makes it so much easier to break free from the emotional eating cycle. So, eating food from boredom is one sign that you're emotionally eating. Another one that's probably more unexpected is anytime you are eating to reward yourself. So if you are eating because you just finished your to-do list and you're like, yes, I'm so glad I got through that, or you had to do something particularly hard and you're like, okay, when I finish that thing, I'm going to have my favorite chocolate, or I'm going to have an ice cream or hot chips or whatever your chosen food is, insert here. But if you're rewarding yourself with food, that is a form of emotional eating, because you're not actually eating because you're actually hungry, because there's physical hunger present. You're eating as a reward. And this can come from conditioning. It can come from our upbringing and the way we may have been rewarded with food, or the way that when we were having emotions present, or when our parents or caregivers wanted us to behave, we were bribed with food. That's kind of where that stems from. However, it is still a sign that you're emotionally eating. So, rewarding yourself with food. I always say it's better to have other rewards that aren't associated with food so that we can break that cycle and break that habit and break the association with food being a reward. And I don't even like calling food treats. Like, I hate it when we're like, oh, treat yourself or just have a treat. It's like, it's a sweet food. Doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be a treat or a reward. How can it actually just be like, I want to eat this because I feel like eating something sweet right now, and that's okay. And yeah, no shame, no guilt, but not seeing it as a treat. Let's remove that languaging, please. So, rewarding yourself with food is another way or sign that you're emotionally eating. So, one commonly known one that you will probably not be surprised by is eating when you're feeling sad or when there's grief present or even overwhelm. But those emotions, like particularly sadness, that one's very commonly associated with emotional eating. And it's even made its way into movies and TV shows or general life. Like, one example I'm going to use, and this is an example I like to use because everyone is always like, oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, is in breakup movies or in like rom-com, sorry, anytime there's a breakup or fight going on between partners, you'll see someone sitting on a couch eating a tub of ice cream, or some friends will be bringing over a tub of ice cream or some wine. That can be part of it too. But just that idea that, oh, okay, you're sad, here, have some ice cream, that'll make you feel better. That's a form of emotional eating. And that's obviously one of the more commonly known of and referred to ones, or commonly seen ones. But that is obviously a sign that you're emotional eating, because rather than actually feeling the sadness and being in the sadness, you're turning to food to soothe. And again, there's no judgment, no shame. Sometimes there's a time and place to soothe with food, but just knowing that that is actually a form of emotional eating. So, other signs that you're emotionally eating include mindlessly eating while you're watching TV or watching a movie or scrolling on socials, or ultimately just doing something else. If you're mindlessly eating and it's coming more from that place of like, I'm eating not because I'm hungry, but because I'm doing something, and just associate watching movies with eating popcorn or things like that, that's a form of emotional eating. And this is actually also a sign that your nervous system is dysregulated. When you are, let's say, watching a movie and you feel the need to be eating or to be scrolling on your phone or doing something else while you're watching that movie or that TV show, that's a pretty telltale sign that your nervous system is dysregulated and it's looking for distractions. And it's very like hyper aroused ultimately. So that's another sign. What else have we got? Snacking anytime you're not hungry. It's a form of emotional eating, overeating. Um, Eating past when you're full as well, or like snacking and not being able to stop snacking. So it's like, oh yeah, I'll just have one biscuit. And then we have one biscuit and we need to have another one and we need to have another one until the whole packet's gone. Or maybe a couple of packets are gone. That's a form of emotional eating when we can't actually stop ourselves from eating it. It's like food has a hold over us and it's like, I need this food. It's like our choice is gone, right? It's like not even a choice whether we have it or not. It's just like, yeah, I'm having it, I need it kind of thing. That's emotional eating. That's a real sign of emotional eating, where you feel like food's got a hold over you, like food's controlling you, like you have no choice but to eat that, or you're doing it subconsciously and it's just like your body's gone for that food and started eating that food before you even realize what's happening. It's like, wow, okay, I'm emotional eating right now. And then what happens is, because we feel guilty or shame ourselves for it or judge ourselves for it, it feeds this cycle and it gets worse and it stops us from being able to break free from that. So this is one of the reasons it's so important to remove that judgment and shame. So that's kind of a sign that if you are starting to snack and you can't stop, or if you're snacking when you're not hungry, or even anytime you're eating past when you're full. So maybe you're sitting having a lovely meal and there's a nice platter of food in front of you and you keep eating even though you're already full, that can come from an emotional place. And I often like to talk about the fact that this can be linked to your upbringing too. And for example, culturally, it can be considered disrespectful if you're not eating enough, or like food is like a love language, I like to say. And I'm from an Italian background, so I grew up around this, where it's like, manja, manja, keep eating, keep eating. Why aren't you eating? What's wrong with you? And it's like the host will feel disrespected if you're not eating copious amounts of food. So noticing where that can be cultural upbringing, but ultimately it's coming back to some sort of emotional eating, and maybe it's coming back to that people pleasing, which is also linked to emotional eating. So that's another sign. If you're eating past when you're full and you're not acknowledging your hunger and your fullness signals, that can be a form of emotional eating or a sign that you're emotional eating. Anytime you're getting irrationally hungry, aka hangry, is one good example. That's a form of emotional eating. True hunger comes on slowly and builds over time. You're not just going to be all of a sudden like, I'm irrationally hungry, give me food, or I'm going to bite your head off kind of thing. So that is a sign that you're emotionally eating, or yeah, feeling like you need to turn to food to self-soothe. In general, if you've tried your fair share of diets, or you're generally not happy with how your body looks, that can lead to unhealthy behaviors with food. And that's forms of emotional eating, or trying to control your food intake or control your body ultimately through food. Is a form of emotional eating, because there's some underlying emotions there. Like, for example, you're not happy with your body, you're trying to change it. That's a form of emotional eating. This isn't to say that you can't want to release excess weight if that's there, or you can have those goals, and that can be great too. That can be really supportive for your health too. I'm not like here to shame anyone for having weight loss or weight release goals. It can actually be really healthy at times. It's more just that place it's coming from, and just being aware of how there's emotion related to this and how that can be leading to unhealthy relationship with food, like emotional eating or like binge eating. And ultimately, all of these things are coming back to having an unhealthy relationship with food. Because if we have a healthy relationship with food and we have food freedom, we don't feel the need to control food. It doesn't feel like food's controlling us. We feel like we can make really clear-headed choices about, yes, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat, or yes, I just really feel like this sweet thing and I'm not hungry, but I'm also going to eat and I'm going to enjoy it and I'm not going to feel guilty or shame myself about it. That's food freedom, when we can really just be like, okay, I'm hungry, this is what I'm going to eat, I've got these options available, we're fueling our body with real food majority of the time, feeling great about that. But then we also have the other things that aren't real foods, quote unquote, or aren't the healthiest, quote unquote, foods for us, and we're not feeling really guilty about it. We're able to just enjoy foods when we want them and know that our body is going to be able to deal with it and know that it's all good. We've got that healthy relationship where it's like, yeah, I feel really like on top of it, where food's not controlling me, I'm not controlling food. It's that healthy relationship. So all of this comes back to healing your relationship with food ultimately when you're looking at emotional eating. But I just wanted to share some signs that you could be emotionally eating, because many people don't think they emotionally eat, or some people know they emotionally eat and they know there's particular ones, like the more commonly known ones. But then when we actually like have our awareness brought to the fact that it can be showing up in many different ways, and probably more ways than we expected, we can actually deal with it. So that when we have that awareness, we can actually do something about it. It's not that we are like, oh no, I'm doing this thing, I'm emotionally eating or I'm binge eating and it makes me a bad person. Like, no, that's not the case. And don't get stuck in that trap of shame, because when we then feel shamed about it, we don't want to look at it, we want to hide it away, and then we don't do anything about it. And it's like an excuse to kind of stay stuck in it. So look at it. It's just, that's what it is. Right now, maybe you're emotionally eating. There's no shame in it, right? It's a behavior, it's a protection strategy. And I talk all about this in my How to Stop Emotional Eating free masterclass that you can get via the description. But it's literally just a protection mechanism. So there's no shame in it. Your body is just trying to keep you safe. So the more you can acknowledge that, the more you can remove the shame, the judgment, the guilt, the easier it is to break free from that cycle and to look at it as what it is and be like, okay, this isn't something that's aligned with my health goals. And this gives me the opportunity to do something about it, the opportunity to overcome emotional eating and overcome binge eating and actually learn to listen to my body and what it needs and feel more in control around food, and not like I have to overly control it or not like I'm out of control around it. So it's all coming back to healing your relationship with food. And I have a free How to Stop Emotional Eating masterclass, which talks more about what we've just spoken about and some strategies to help prevent emotional eating and to help you in the moment when you catch yourself emotional eating. And it just breaks all of this down so it can get you on the journey to overcoming emotional eating and moving towards food freedom. So that's a completely free masterclass that you can find via the description below. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll speak to you soon.